In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're exploring three transformative themes: the power of retreats for personal growth, redefining success on your terms, and the art of creating meaningful connections. Our guest today is Anna VanAgtmael, the founder of Wandering Roots, a brand that creates transformative retreats for women worldwide. Anna's journey from the high-stake world of biotech to designing deeply immersive retreats is a testament to the courage of reinvention. Through her own experience, she has discovered the profound impact of community, adventure, and self-care in unlocking one's true potential. From navigating burnout to building a thriving business around connection and empowerment, Anna's insight will empower you to embrace adventure, step outside of the ordinary, and design a life that truly fulfills you. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your supports help more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Miss Anna VanAgtmael, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to see you, and I'm looking forward to discussing retreats, community, connections, bunch of great stuff with you. But to kick us off, please tell us more about Wandering Roots.
Yes. I am the founder of Wandering Roots. It's a retreat brand. We host adventure retreats all over the world, and I also help other entrepreneurs plan and host their own profitable retreats.
Fantastic. And I want to take you back to sort of the beginning of that story. That's always something that always amazed me. So you had a very early career in biotech, if from my research, but tell me more about how you were basically at that time. What was some of your main objective and aspiration when you were beginning your career? Tell me more about that phase of just kicking off professionally.
Yeah. So I very much just was a very practical human being, practical kid, practical young adult. And I got good grades, went to college, got a job, and was just climbing the ladder and planning to do that until I was 65. And I got I worked for 3 startups and 13 years in molecular diagnostics, which made me pretty risk tolerant because there was no guarantee ever, and we were always starting something new. And then in my last job, I was given the opportunity to be an entrepreneur with no financial risk. So actually a company in Toronto, your neighbor, hired me. I'm in Michigan, close neighbor to the south. And they hired me to build a lab. The execs were up there, but we had to build the space, hire the staff, buy the equipment, manage the inventory, all of that. And it really planted a seed of maybe I could start my own business, and at the same time, right around the time I started, I was 28. I had to have neck surgery. I was in a couple of bad car accidents as a kid. And so it was the first pause in my life. I had to be in a neck brace for 4 months, and I realized I had achieved more success, figuratively and financially, than I ever thought possible, but I was wildly unhappy. I was just honestly bored, which brought a lot of guilt and shame that I didn't have more gratitude for it. And anyways, I just thought I had this realization of, my own mortality, because no one thinks about that in their 20s. That's something that happens to older people. And I thought I should be jazzed about this. If I'm passionate about the work, imagine the type of success I could have. And I honestly sat with that for a while. I was trying to heal and I was trying to still build this lab simultaneously. And so a couple years I just started doing things that terrified me. And eventually I took yoga teacher training because I was trying to heal from chronic pain and not be a pain clinic patient for the rest of my life. And I had never been in a space with 11 strangers that were just loving and supporting and accepting each other for who they were and not who they're trying to be. And I thought I had been traveling a lot, so I thought I could combine that, my love of travel, and that vibe and host a retreat. And again, it took several years for me to even figure out that's what I wanted to do. But that's kind of the Cliff's Notes version.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that you had to step outside of your comfort zone to perhaps came to that realizations. You mentioned basically yoga, and I'm a big fan of yoga myself. I practice yoga and meditations, but it seemed like it really played a significant role in your personal basically growth, specifically at that time. Tell me more about basically what was so transformative about it. What was like this aha moment of what yoga came to realization?
So I initially got into it for the physical benefits. Like I said, I wanted to learn more about my body and its new limitations, and even just learn stretching and things that I could do daily. And as most people that practice for a long time, they realize there's more mental benefits than physical, and that's what kept me coming back to my mat. But I truly had, like, I knew I wanted to do something travel, something community driven. And I heard Wandering Roots on my mat one time, like just almost this download from the universe. It was like super eerie. I've only had a couple in my life. And, I was like, okay, I have the name of a business and I need to like make it. I need to figure this out. And over the course of like 4 months, my best friend made a logo and a website, and we just decided 3 hours north of here, we would host a retreat in the summer. So
Interesting. So quite adventurous.
yeah.
I love what, I don't recall the author of this quote, but I found it fascinating. But it says, yoga is the journey of the self, through the self, to the self.
Yeah.
And, which is quite amazing. And, I'm a huge proponent of it because as I was a young man doing physical activities, I was feeling more and more, I felt like there was restriction in my movements, right? I felt like there was basically losing mobility even at like 17, 18 years old.
Yes.
So it was, all right, there's definitely something that needs to be done here. And then my partner told me, Sam, a flexible body makes a flexible mind. He's a very seasoned professional now. He's 73. And, when he told me that, and I was always amazed at how sharp he was and still mentally basically astute he was, that's what he told me. He told me, hey, the superpower is just first of all, to be aware of it and work on it, but afterwards allow your body to be flexible so your mind can be, for you specifically, did yoga ever became, especially within this transition of being purely physical to mental, did it became basically somewhat of a kind of like a illness to a certain extent? Was that having any healing benefits?
Yeah. Honestly, it changed my life on multiple levels. First of all, exactly what you said. I remember in training, they talked about an onion having multiple layers, and the more yoga you practice, the more you're peeling back the layers and taking all of these things and all of these boxes and your experiences and things that people have projected onto you and like getting to the core of who you are. And, I've said this multiple times, but I don't even recognize that version of myself anymore. Like, I love her and I'm proud of her and I'm so grateful for everything she's done, but I am so different. I'm much clearer. I'm much more flexible, mind and body. And, also your emotions are stored in your physical body. So like you were saying, people, the older they get, they normally disconnect more and more from their body. And the only reason why a kid can do somersaults is because they're still in their body. They haven't been disconnected from it. And so the more you lose that connection, the less aware you are of just what's going on inside of you. And so yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with your partner, and I 100% I I'm so like, it was a very humbling and terrible experience to be in a neck brace at 28 for that long. I was depressed, but I am so grateful for it now because I had a great awakening at a very young age and I got to live a better life because of it. So.
Absolutely, and it isn't that beautiful. Actually, there's something to say about the fact that some of those worst moments, at least you think they're your worst moments, actually are incredible launching pad for sort of the rest of the story that is about to be unfold. One thing that I saw the tagline for Wandering Roots, which I'd love to talk to you about, sort of that formations of the company itself, but it's escape the ordinary, embrace adventure. What do you mean about that, and why do you think it's so important?
So I think a lot of people were exactly like me, just going through the motions and not being awake to like, you have agency and you get to create a life you love. And we don't have to just live for the weekend or do what's expected of us. We get to do something that we love every single day. And, not that operating your own business doesn't come with its own challenges and down days, but for the most part, it brings me a lot of fulfillment and purpose. So I think the only difference between the people that pursue a life they love and the people that don't is just they tried and they kept going when it got hard. I mean, I'm not doing anything different than anybody else could do. Just started trying things. And eventually I side hustled the business for 2 years just to not have to take a huge like lifestyle change of starting it up and building an audience from scratch. I was very aware that would take some time and it would take a while to supplement my income. So there's so many ways you can do it. You just got to try. Keep going.
Yeah, there's the story. It's two men, one thing that he can, one thing that he can't, and they're both right. Right. That's it's always something that I keep in mind because you're right. The typically, and I see this more and more. I'm always amazed actually. Everywhere I go to networking and charity events and so on, there's always a sense that, hey, those people they're exactly like you are. They just try for longer, or they had one idea in which they were very persistent towards. But truly, that's all there is. This world was not built by people that are more intelligent or more clever than you at all. Just people that said, you know what, let's do it. And there's definitely beauty in this. There's a distinctions in life which I like to dive deeper with you about, which is typically people tend to regret more the things that they didn't do instead of the thing that they actually did, right? That's marked one. Tell me more about why you think that is, and maybe how does that tie into the mission of Wandering Roots in the first place?
Yeah, this is a great question because one time I was hosting an event at a nearby Athleta years ago when I first started, and a woman came up to me and asked how I became fearless. And I was like, not true. Don't know what I put out on social media that made you think that. But my biggest fear is getting to the end and having regrets that I didn't try, that I didn't take a chance on myself, that I didn't just see how it goes. And that's a bigger fear to me than failure. And so I agree with you. I think that if you can get in that headspace of knowing that life is just failing and picking yourself back up and pivoting and learning the lesson and moving on, you're not so... I always say, what is the worst that's going to happen? If it's not death, give it a shot, you know?
Right. Exactly. And also, so you took the leap to entrepreneurship in a very strategic fashion, actually.
Yeah.
You said that it was a side hustle for 2 years. Obviously, you were in biotech, so quite a high-end, perhaps, positions.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think that's, you said it basically at the very beginning, you're very pragmatic. So that made sense basically with who you were as a person. Tell me more about some of the psychological basically elements to now being your own boss, now being in business compared to that to basically being in biotech. Was that basically a hard basically change of pace for you, or tell me more about it?
So I will say that writing copy, like creative copy for blog posts or emails or social media, was an unlearning before a learning. I used to write published articles for peer-reviewed journals, and it was just data. Here's the facts. Things no one wants to read. It's not interesting. It's not catchy, you know? And
Yes.
so yeah, I had to like unlearn this skill that I had been honing in and doing professionally and getting paid for a while to like be able to do it a different way, to be a creative writer. And that was like a huge mind block for a while. I ended up doing, when I started the brand, it was 2018 and blogs were still sort of a thing. We weren't like so into newsletters. It was sort of the tail end of it.
Sure.
And I just started just writing almost as a form of therapy of like changing my life dramatically, how some of the people that I thought would be supportive thought I was having a midlife crisis and should suck it up, and just how hard it was and how things like that I didn't expect were happening, and then other really beautiful things were also happening. And that sort of helped me kind of like bridge the gap of like being a data like entry person to like whatever. But I also, all of the skills I learned as being a manager or a boss or starting startups is I was super flexible. I never wanted to micromanage people. I believed in hiring people that would take the load off of my plate, and I wanted to empower them to be able to ask questions, but also just run with it. Be confident, you know, build resilience and confidence. And
You got it.
that's what I do with all of my co-hosts and independent contractors, and they truly complement my event now. I couldn't do it without them. I could, but I don't want to because I think they're the best. And so a lot of the things that, and honestly too, I've always been a numbers nerd. I've always been a spreadsheet nerd and like whatever. And that helped me manage money for these like large venue deposits and thinking about ticket prices and helping other people that aren't making profits now do theirs. It isn't my driving force. It's nobody's why is to make money, but it's the only sustainable way to keep running your business instead of operating an expensive hobby. So, I took so many, and honestly, I grew so much confidence in those roles that it gave me more confidence to take the leap. So, I learned so many new skills, but I also got to take a lot of the ones that I've been honing for a while, I guess is the answer.
Sure. And because, like you said, marketing copies and obviously more thesis or data type of copies are very different. And one works very well in some basically intellectual papers, and will definitely not work on a copy, basically on a website copy perhaps. And that emotion is something that was very interesting, and I want to basically dive deeper into it with you, as we understand that it's so important that people buy with emotions. All right. Surely a sell, and the best way to sell, in my opinion, is to take the sell basically from the mind to the heart. Once you're there, and that makes them connect with what we call the meaning network at Core Centrica. That's where basically the sales become so much more, basically much fitting to the human, not only brain, but human pattern systems. It also allows them to sell themselves, which, as a salesperson, that's the biggest dream. Did you work with any basically professionals to basically be able to polish that emotional side of your copies, or did you learn basically that in an autodidact type of way? Tell me more about that journey to unlearn and relearn.
Yeah, I had the privilege and the pleasure of making very good friends, and still two of my best friends, with a woman that is a copywriter and a web developer. And then my girlfriend that's been on all 22 of my retreats, that's a photographer, and she's kind of a marketing genius as well. And since she was on all of my retreats, she was able to help me put more words to it, because it almost felt too big for a while. Like chasing your dreams and pursuing your passion is pretty personal, and putting yourself out there in kind of a vulnerable way, and what my brand stands for, was difficult. Especially for someone that kind of was always a stoic professional in my past life. So it was like just this, I don't know, different level of vulnerability. And again, like any sale felt personal, and then non-sale felt personal too. Like they didn't not like your offer. They didn't like you, you know? So, they were sort of mentors and handholders in helping me do that and get more words for it. And then the more I ended up hosting and then also helping other entrepreneurs, I realized I was like, I have a pretty abundant mindset, but I was still coming from a little bit of a place of lack where I was just jam packing my itinerary to like make it worthy and make it like, worthwhile to them and all the things. But like, there's thousands of retreats. I've helped so many different types of women plan. There's like, you can host a retreat for anything and they're coming for you. And that's hard to like, that's kind of hard for a lot of us to just acknowledge and move forward in, but they want to spend time with you. Don't jam pack it. They want to hang out and talk to you. There's something drawing them in about your retreat. And I also always say that as a host of a retreat, you have to convince there's an extra layer to your sale where you have to convince them you're not a serial killer because you usually meet and then you spend the night together immediately. It is a quick, like, it's like a very quick first date. So, yeah, it's a learning.
No, absolutely. I'm sure it is. And you said that you host basically retreats for women and entrepreneurs. Does that mean basically that sometimes there is men or it's always only women?
So I actually only host retreats for women. I did do a couples retreat back in 2019, and I just didn't like it as much, so I only do women. And I rent privately, so it's just easier figuring out the bathrooms and the situations like that. I help other people plan their retreats. I don't necessarily go on them, other entrepreneurs, and that's just a mixed bag of anybody. Men, women. It's just mostly entrepreneurs. I don't do corporate. It's not really my bag. So,
no, I understand. Okay. And tell me about that, because there's, and by the way, there is no walking on egg here. All right. It's totally fine. That your audience is a solely woman. That's very great with not only myself, but people that listen to the show. When you're thinking about the difference between basically hosting retreats as of yourself, of your personal, basically sentiment towards it, tell me more about basically why it seems easier for you to not only connect, but create basically an immersive retreats for a woman instead of perhaps a male brain structure. Is that anything that comes to mind?
Yes. So initially, I never said it was women only, and I kept getting questions if men could attend. And I was like, man, there must be something in my marketing that's saying that I can. So I threw a couples one out there just to see how it would go. And it was just louder. It felt like there was more drinking and not as much connecting. And I don't drink at all on retreats, but it just didn't feel like people usually connect immediately. Like they come with like first day of school jitters, and then by the first meal, they're all becoming fast friends and talking a lot and sharing commonalities and things. And so it just like, I just prefer it. My husband would never go on a group trip. So I think there's like a mental block of like most men like, no, I would only go with you. That's weird. I don't want to share space with strangers. I think women as a whole are more apt to put themselves in a situation like that, like go to a group yoga class, go on a group trip, things like that. But not all men. I have a couple clients that host really large retreats, like 20 to 30, and it's just a group of people. But truly at my core, I want people to come by themselves. It makes you don't have a security blanket. You will meet more people because you have to. And so if I broke it down that way, that would be the way. But I have so many women now that come on multiple and come year after year that they're just I like seeing them every year. And now I'm kind of catering to 75% of those repeats that keep coming. So.
Yes, and that's very interesting. So basically, without that that basically safety blankets, you feel that they are more apt to open themselves and therefore experience it basically more fully, I suppose. Would that be fair?
I want them all to. I don't believe that you can't create quiet and space at home. I believe you can. You can meditate at home. You can connect with yourself. You can see what's going on. You can check in and see what you really want. It is a lot easier when you're not home and somebody's making your food and making all of these decisions, and you can kind of just truly like unplug, decompress, and check in. And I want everybody to get that. And I want them all to feel taken care of and worthy of it. And then I want them to go home and see if they can incorporate any of those things into their daily life. whether that's making a huge change or not.
Yes. I saw one of your next retreat is Iceland,
Yeah.
actually. And,
Yeah.
and truly it seems like your objective is to make this quite immersive and definitely unique. I think there's a unique touch to it. In your words, what would you say makes your retreat stands out, and perhaps what makes it so different and unique compared to anyone else in the market?
I think something I'm really proud of is I've always wanted to be the approachable brand. I don't believe that wellness looks the same for anybody, and I don't think it looks the same for me on a day-to-day basis. So we always say choose your own adventure. Look at the itinerary as a suggestion. Get used to checking in with yourself, minute to minute, hour to hour, of like, would I rather take a nap than go hiking? No one slept through a meal. We have a very great chef, so I've never seen anyone sleep through a meal. But yeah, we have a lot of people with food allergies and dietary restrictions, but it doesn't mean that all of us have to eat vegan for the week. My chef just is like, this is Mary's, this is Ashley's, whatever. We're three women that are very approachable and can meet you where you're at and hold space for whatever you have. And we're also going to laugh and have a really good time and make you feel the best as well. So
That's great. That's great. And I would love if you could share some of the most memorable and perhaps most sort of basically transcending moments that you had and the impact that you had on some of those women. Do you have any story basically to share that comes to mind?
One woman we hosted in Arenal, Costa Rica 4 times, and this village is really small. It's next to La Fortuna. It didn't even have a real road for the first couple of years that we were there. And one of the people that we do an excursion with lives in the national park. And his family for generations has been there before it was a national park. So they literally bring villagers from nearby farms' horses, and we take them up into the mountains and we hike these 2 waterfalls that no one else is there. And he's been able to build this like bigger home, and a lot of the vendors and the townspeople, like, they're so proud, and we're almost like family. They want to come show you like their new house or the barn they just built or whatever. But anyways, it's the one year it was so muddy. It was a little bit treacherous, and this woman was like not super confident on a horse. And when we got back to the house, she quit her job. There was like 3 days left to the retreat, and she was like, if I can do that, I can do anything. And I don't like it. I've been talking myself into it for a long time, and I'm gonna quit. And so that was probably like the biggest thing. But I have so many women that hug me when they leave and just thank me for doing this and for creating this type of experience. And a lot of them, even women in their 60s, say they've never felt that taken care of or that seen. And like, that makes my heart feel like it's going to explode. That's why I'm always tired at the end of the week. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but that keeps me going.
Right. No, that's quite beautiful. Is there typically basically an age range? Is there anything you can see from a target audience perspective that yeah, you do?
So are you ready for a bullshit answer?
Yeah, go for it. Give me the bullshit and then the real answer.
Okay, so the youngest guest I've ever had has been 19. They have to be 18 to come. And then the oldest was 84. And her friend, who was 77, were musicians, and they had been on multiple music retreats for 30, 40 years. And it was one of our local ones where it was just a long weekend, and they brought their ukuleles and played us a little concert. It was like one of the coolest things. But normally it's 30s to 65, 70. We get a lot of women that are empty nesters, maybe recently divorced, like, I'm finally doing something for me. I've been taking care of everybody else for the majority of my life. We got a lot of women that are in the thick of raising young children, and they might take them on vacation, but it doesn't feel like vacation. So this is their vacation once a year. A lot of young professionals. There's a really good mix of just a lot of women from a lot of different walks of life.
Interesting. Yeah, that was my my thoughts, which was kind of like this taking care of myself, maybe recently divorced, or maybe the children's are now grown, right? So they have more
Yeah.
time for themselves. I suppose that occur quite often.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to go, to Europe for 7 days than covering all of your dependents and saving your pennies for their college, things like that.
Right. No, that makes sense. In one, and this is a complex questions, but it's something I was always had in mind. I do. There's a lot of people basically that are partners, clients, friends that do retreats. One thing that was I never went on one personally, formally, but I was always wondering from the eyes of the beholder, from the person basically I want to get on a retreat, is there any perhaps rules of thumbs concerning the destinations, what you want to have off of it, or is that all basically less important than just connecting with the people that are doing it and trusting them for the process of having a memorable basically experiences? Tell me more about basically the bridge between kind of like the tangibles, the technicals where we're going, and then the intangibles of just, hey, I just love these women. So let me just do a retreat with them.
Yeah. So I initially started just taking people to national park because I had been to so many. I like kind of felt comfortable, and I thought of all the beautiful places in the world, like these are it. I also have a very hard time doing things small, so I am like a chronic abuser of never hosting close to an airport. So it's just a journey. So that's a big joke amongst me and my co-hosts and some of the guests. But so when I started getting, probably a couple years ago, when I started getting a lot of repeats, I would usually put 4 or 5 locations out there and say, okay, everybody vote on, your top 2 so that some of these ladies can pick now.
Interesting.
And a lot of these ladies have no shade in just putting in requests randomly via email, text, in person, whatever. But I would say that I'm always trying to pursue somewhere beautiful and somewhere slightly in the shoulder season. So a little before or after peak season, because 1, you can get a better rate, and 2, there's just less crowds. And I have no problem dealing with weather. Being in Michigan, being in Canada, I don't think there's bad weather, just bad gear. You gotta like suck it up and get out there. So, that's kind of, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, and we can dive deeper into it. But to me, it was always interesting to sort of consider I suppose what's most important. But in your experience, in the way you describe it, it seems like who you're going with, and basically the intangibles of just doing something out of your comfort zone perhaps is more important than just the place and what you're really doing there, right?
Yeah, some of my past favorite ones are just the groups. It's always the people. Will say, as a host and planner, finding the venue is the hardest part, because I don't want to host at a large resort. I want ours to feel very secluded and spacious and quiet. And so if I have a location on my mind and I can't find a house to rent that fits my requirements, it's a no-go. It doesn't work out. I don't force it.
Sure, and that's also interesting. So you were talking about the crowd aspect of it. I suppose when you're doing a very personalized, very immersive retreats, and what I mean by the crowd is basically other tourists, right? Not the people basically native to that place. Is that something that basically sometimes you wrestle with? Is there a time where if there's too many other tourists, it becomes basically a bit less immersive, perhaps? Is that anything that you need to consider?
Yeah, we're going to the Dolomites in October, and I went not this past fall, but the fall before, and again in shoulder season. But some of these trails are beautiful for a reason, and so they are tourist traps. There's a lot more people, and I'm not a morning person at all, but I dragged my girlfriend out of bed hella early because I wanted to get there before there's just this onslaught of people. And so we try to do that, because also it's really, really hard for me to keep track of 10 or 12 people on a trail like that, especially if it's several hours. There's people going faster or slower, and one of us is usually in the front and one of us is usually in the back. But when you get more people like that on there, I feel like it's herding cats almost. It's impossible. So we avoid it. There are places I usually try to go everywhere we're going before. And I almost always do. And then I make decisions based on, is the drive too far? Is it worth it? Are there too many people? And make cuts that way. I usually try to like go for vacation, try 8 or 9 things and pick my top 4.
Okay, so you go there first, and afterwards you bring the crew. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very interesting, and that's also basically part of what you're doing with assisting entrepreneurs to plan basically their profitable basically retreats. So it's a sort of another lane of what you girls in this case are doing. I'm really wondering about this, and maybe you can help me to fully grasp it, but what do you think are the key elements of a retreat that ensures basically that both the profitability side of things will be done, and also the transformations portion of it will also be sort of balanced and harmonized in a way in which makes sense? Is there any sort of rule of thumbs or a kind of like a formal process that you use?
Yes. So I personally plan all of these people's retreats the same way that I plan my own. And so I write down my why. It hasn't really changed over the years. It's maybe evolved a little. My why is just to create a space where people are seen and accepted for who they are and not who they're trying to be. That's it. It's pretty simple. And then before I start, I have like a location in mind, and I will write down a price that I think that the ticket prices should start at and what I think that I energetically should make. And then I go through and I find excursions and venues and I put them in the spreadsheet. And if those numbers are way off, then it's not aligned. You can never sell something that you feel is too expensive. Mm-hmm. It just won't work. So I tell all of my clients, a lot of times we have to really get over some like scarcity mindset, or just a lot of women in the wellness industry want to help everybody to almost a detriment of just making no money. And we have to like work through how it's just not sustainable. So sometimes that's starting lower for their first one and just creating a smaller offering that's more affordable for everybody. And then being able to sort of take a level up a bit for the second one. But I get a lot of clients that they're just desperate. They've done it 2 or 3 times. They've had great attendance, but they're just so burnout because they haven't made any money. So that's one way I do it. Because again, if those numbers don't line up pretty closely, then, and we can't, if it's so far apart that I can't cut something, or, you know, then I just walk away from it and like abandon it. And when I do other clients, I give them 3 options, trying to get them at very different price points and different scenarios so that they like get to pick the one that aligns the most with them. And then I think I forget the second part of your question.
That's the profitability basically portions. What about the transformative portions?
Oh, yeah.
For
Okay.
them, but the people coming.
Yeah, so a lot of them come with like, I have to give them everything and the kitchen sink, you know? And I'm like, no, like what? There is some content. No one in like the history of hosting retreats has ever just like not had content that they're super, super passionate about. Like shit that changed their life that they want to like share with other people. So there's usually that is already like done. They have the content. They're just overwhelmed by like the logistics and how to make it happen. And so whatever that is, I make them write that down, and then on a separate doc, write a draft itinerary. And then I take that first piece of like the thing that's the most important to them, and I make sure that is dominating their itinerary. And that might mean never leaving the venue. That might mean doing more workshops and less excursions. There's a woman that's a Thai massage therapist, like they're not leaving that much. They're there to learn from her. She's been doing it forever. And just learning skills and practical, you know, assessments and things like that. So that's usually how it works. They usually come with way too many things. And then I remind them that the point of a retreat is for your guests to feel rested and lovely and not exhausted. And so we scale back a lot. We talk a lot about the itinerary.
Yeah, and again, I can definitely see that from a personality standpoint. I can definitely feel like if I was hosting a retreat, there would be way too many things on there.
Yeah,
That's for
I
sure.
always
Uh,
try.
so from a personality standpoint, have you seen basically the woman that comes to you basically for planning that retreats and how they are as a person? Does that affect a lot about the venue and the excursions? And
Yeah.
perhaps do you want the retreat to reflect who you are first before you sell it to other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever your content you're passionate about sharing, there's a vibe that is very, very important to that content. And everybody is wildly different when it comes to that. Some people really need a luxurious, like, bougie place, and other people want to camp out in the middle of nowhere, you know? There's a woman that is a food photographer, and she teaches other entrepreneurs how to get these big, like, clients, like the food magazines or like things like that. And so she had to be close enough, they did it in Italy, to a market where they could buy fresh produce, photograph it before and during that they were preparing it and after. And so, like, it absolutely dictates where you're going to be and what it's going to feel like and look like. And they needed a beautiful space to cook in because the kitchen was going to be photographed too. So, yes, it matters a lot. I have a huge, like, intake form, but honestly, if they created a draft itinerary, I'd probably get a bit good enough vibe of what they needed. So,
Right. So you're doing sort of consulting at the same time when you're planning these
yeah,
retreats of just, all right, this is who you are. This is what I think you're trying to achieve.
yeah,
This is way too much. Let's do this instead.
yeah. It's sort of like mentoring. Like, here are all of the mistakes I've made. Please avoid these, and tell me all of your limiting beliefs because they're coming out already, and I'll help you.
Right. And
Yeah.
you were talking about the energetic portion of it, which is actually, that's very interesting. I rarely see people talk about this, but it's so important. This understanding of just from either a pricing standpoint and from a selling standpoint, how important it is to be fully dialed in and fully perhaps confident with the fact that you're delivering incredible value. Is there do you come across basically a lot of women where they will severely underprice what they're
Yes,
trying to
all the
what they're
time.
trying to do? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I used to work in the hospital in college. I worked third shift, 12 hours, and I would do 3 back to back. And I would say, consider you're technically an on-call physician for a week or a weekend. You know, that's a lot of time. If you look at nothing else, that's a lot of time. And also, me personally, hosting the event is the easiest part. 90% of the work happens before you're even there. So, people underestimate what the ROI should be because they don't realize how much work it is. That's what I want to help them with. So,
Oh yeah, and look, I have women clients, women employees. I have a mother.
yeah,
Typically, woman tends to be less greedy, just the way it is.
yeah,
Not saying that there is no greedy women that definitely are, but it's definitely less often the case. And typically, specifically, as you're telling me, your audience, typically they have children or they were married, and there's always this understanding of thinking for others that I really appreciate out of the feminine energy. But you help basically perhaps thinking of themselves and making sure it's enjoyable along the way, also, which
yeah,
is also very important.
yeah.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the challenges basically in retreats plannings. When you're thinking about basically the like you said, the difficulties and some of the mental aspects of wondering that you want everything to be done well and sort of this pressure that comes with it. What has been basically some of the biggest challenges that you face in planning retreats, and how do you typically navigate them so that way that you make the most of it?
So anytime you're dealing with a group, you're dealing with a lot of different, you know, bathroom schedules, bedroom schedule, nighttime routines, inch likes, dislikes. I would say most of the time guests are very open-minded. If they're going to go on a trip with strangers, they're pretty laid back and open-minded. And, but I do every once in a while get one or two that want to squeeze everything that they can out of the week. And so trying to find I now rent places that either have or large properties that have hiking trails on the property, or maybe we're on a lake in Iceland. We have one where there's kayaks available, so that because I now hire drivers, I'm really, really terrible at multitasking, and I just could never speak to people while I was driving. I would like just drive right by it, even if I knew where I was going. And so
Okay.
it was like, I really want to be able to talk to everybody, and being in the car for 30 minutes one way or the other is a perfect time. So, anyways, we now hire drivers. So it's a little bit harder for me to entertain these people that want to do more than what's on the itinerary. So that has been the solution for me. It's just giving them suggestions and then autonomy to go off and do it themselves. I guess the other thing would be, we're like almost professional, like some of these houses we rent, we get there and they don't have that many kitchen utensils, or we got to move the furniture because there's nowhere to do yoga or something like that. It's more like physical space and working with what you have. We're pretty much professionals at it now, but in the beginning I'm like, oh God, this is terrible, and you just got to figure it out before your guests get there, because you don't want that energy. So.
Yes, right. No, and that makes sense. So when you said that 90% of the difficulties actually come before you get to the retreat, that's because you seem to be actually a very extensive planner from what I was able to hear. So what we're doing in the morning, what's the excursions, all the way to nighttime routine. So very detailed, right?
Yeah.
And
I want to have like enough space where there's gathering space that no one's keeping you up if you are like going to bed early. And then also I'm a light sleeper, so there's people that really, really want their own room. So trying to find a mix of shared space for the people that want to shared rooms, save money, and then private if they really, really, they don't want to be exhausted by the end of the week, It's that. I really get into the gift bags. I want them to feel special. And just like the little details, I probably spend more time on than most people. I like when people feel special. So
right. No, I think that makes you unique in the marketplace, and that's of great value. I'm a 10 p.m. 4 a.m. type of sleeper, so I could definitely.
My husband, he's always up at 4, but he's usually in bed by 9.
9, all right. That's maybe when probably I will get older and I will need
6 hours is not enough sleep, Sam.
Oh, it is enough. It depends. But it depends on your lifestyle. It depends on a bunch of things. How much sleep do you get?
At least 8 hours. Otherwise, so how hangry is a condition? Slangry is a bigger condition for me. Sleeping.
All right. Yeah. And that's also something that I'm sure you see from the group itself, right? Especially for those shared rooms. I'm sure there's women that just wake up 2 hours before basically the last one.
Yeah.
But that comes with the whole magic, right, of everything that you're doing, with the immersive process, right? That's more of a, isn't that's why perhaps it's not that hard to navigate, just because it's, they kind of like prepare themselves to such thing occurring.
I mean, like you touched on too, women are nurturers. So they're so respectful. They get up quietly because they're used to not waking up other people in their household, and sneak out and let their roommate sleep in and go have coffee with somebody else that's awake in the living room. Abby's always up early, our chef. So sometimes when I come in to help her prepare breakfast, there's already a couple people at the bar, chatting away. It's just like a beautiful, like, adult sleepover of just people hanging out and doing what they want, but also making space for everybody that's on a different schedule.
Right. And I think that's the portions of building connections and building community, specifically through that retreats. It seemed like you're a very one-on-one nurturer type of person, which obviously fits your job now quite well, your business quite well. But when you're thinking about this strong sense of community amongst basically those retreat participants, is it often that basically they become friends well after basically the retreats? Do they keep in touch and they tell you about it? Is that a recurrent?
Yeah. I actually last fall just remodeled this old Victorian house that I moved into, and people got to hear the year-long angst of it all. And so I had them all over that were local. They just came over for snacks and hangs and stuff. And then we always communicate in WhatsApp for the retreat, so people can find each other in the airport. I can make sure they find the driver when they're getting shuttled in from the airport. We can update people if dinner's running behind. And then people start like, oh, this is Sharon, this is the thing I was talking about this morning at coffee, and send links to things. The girls that went to Scotland last May are still just very sarcastic and sending each other. The group chat is always just insane still, like almost a year later. And I set up the Iceland one early because flights were cheap. And so now they're all connecting before they get there. And yeah, people also just go to coffee with, with one or two of them, or make plans outside of me and my other co-hosts. But we meet up when we can, and we still keep in touch digitally. So.
And that's I suppose for you specifically, I'm sure that's so rewarding, right?
It is.
This relationship building that occurred through those retreats. Isn't
These
that the
are
whole
real connections? I always say telling a stranger your deepest dark secrets is usually easier because they don't have you in a box of how you fit into their life. It's so much easier. And those types of intimate interactions really bond you. And it's rewarding. I also, when I had neck surgery and I was in a neck brace, I couldn't do anything, couldn't drive, couldn't whatever. And I had a lot of friends in college, but most of us moved away from where we went to college. So I didn't have a lot of physical, close friends that come over and bring me food or just commiserate with how terrible it was. And I remember telling my husband, I need to make more local friends. I don't have enough of a in-person community here. And it was tough to be older when you don't have just as much free time and flexibility to make new friends. And so that was something I was really desiring. And so to be able to see that in other people and provide a space where that's possible is really rewarding.
Yes, I know. I'm sure it is. And from that perspective as well, one thing that I want to touch on is when they're part of the basically retreats, and they learn basically all these things, and they connect with one another, and perhaps they better understand the sense of self-care and balance, what it means to actually live and not just go through the motion, as you like to say it. Tell me more about basically, because that's a big portion of what you promote, that the daily basically self-care. Does that result into basically them picking up on new habits in their day-to-day life as well, and sharing them and saying, hey, I take 15 minutes in the morning now to do yoga. Just tell me more about just how it can translate to an actual better life, even after the retreats, well after the retreats.
I think that some women go home and ask their partners to divide the home labors more too. They've now been fed. Someone's cleaned up after them, that. And just knowing they don't have to do it all is a big one. I think realizing maybe post meditation, how either you feel more energized, clear, not always, but usually, creating that sacred space for you. Realizing that it can only be 5 minutes if that's all you have, or realizing it does take an hour for you to drop in, and then, getting up before everybody else does, because it's really important, because you want to create that same feeling that you were able to tap into when you were away. I think that everybody has a really beautiful reminder that they're worthy of whatever they want. And then they have a little bit more motivation and support to go after that. And it looks different for everybody.
Right. And that's the other thing as well. There's a big customized sort of vision for what you're talking about. You're not a one size fits all type of program, or perhaps type of promoter, especially from a health basically perspective. And I love what Eleanor Brown actually had to say about this, which is self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve basically from an empty vessel, which is quite clever. In to me, especially as an entrepreneur, there's a big proponent on harmony. All right, especially because we have a day job that are very lengthy hours. You have a lot of things to do, a lot of things to think about outside of yourself. Sometimes there's a sentiment in which you lose yourself, specifically if you're not aware and strategic towards basically harmonizing your life. What is your self-care routines, perhaps, and how do you yourself basically maintain balance as an entrepreneur and now person that hosts retreats across the world?
Yeah. I believe that balance can sometimes feel like a myth. I think there are hard seasons, hustle seasons, seasons of rest. I really tap into the nature seasons being in Michigan. Like, I just do less in the winter physically. My husband owns a landscape business, and they literally shut down for 3 or 4 months. So he's just home more resting because they work so many hours in the summer. And so that's just a natural rhythm for my home as well. 2 years ago, I had a very real realization so I started the brand in 2018. I quit the lab in October of 2019, only to have to cancel all of my retreats in 2020. And so I was in this mental cycle of thinking it was always going to be hard and difficult. And I just was like, success is not a number to me. Success is how, everybody has their values, and one of mine is health, just because I really started taking much better care of myself after surgery and everything. And if my health is deteriorating because of my work-life balance, then something major has to change. And downtime was just not happening. So anyways, mine, if I don't get enough in-person human connection, health, and then freedom. Freedom is like one of the biggest ones. And if I am like living and dying by some self-imposed schedule and some weird, stupid thing, it's not successful. So that summer I took the entire summer off. And then last year I took a partial sabbatical because I turned 40, and just having enough trust in the universe and, confidence that, I'm a numbers person. So we would always figure it out financially or be prepared to do things like that, is a bigger indicator for me of success and work-life balance than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this great book by Jim Rohn, The Seasons of Life. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
yes.
But it's interesting that you mentioned you lived through the seasons, because we are one of the rare places in the world where we do have the 4 seasons, which is quite lovely. And you're definitely right. It affects your productivity level for sure. And sometimes also, and that's another thing, that's kind of like the guilt portion of being an entrepreneur and high achievers. You try to combat that. You try to basically, let me go to basically a summer place so I can still have the same type of outputs. And that's fine. And I do this personally, and I'm still quite young and grinding and doing all these things. But it's also very important to rest, to actively rest. I think is the right way to look at it. And to say that, that journey or that season of self-care and perhaps doing what seems to be less work, but it's just more internal instead of external, will serve the time that in which, again, in the summers, you're now even more dialed and perhaps more sharp and more astute, intellectually speaking. So, that's also something a lot of wisdom, I think, in that. And I want to truly dive deeper into some of what you've imagined with Wandering Roots, sort of the future and how everything unfolds. You just mentioned that you're now basically in your early 40s, and you spent a lot of times in biotech. Now, basically spending what it seems to be, probably because 2020 was a full year of COVID, obviously. So I suppose you've been doing retreats full time now for about 2-3 years, professionally wise.
Yeah. Yep. Technically I'm just had my 7th birthday with Wandering Roots, but I would say 2021, 2-3 is when we got to do the big ones and some like more. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Right. Makes sense. So I'm really wondering if you could tell me more about that, what you see in this expansions of basically wandering roots and instead of the offering basically more diverse experiences, obviously scaling your impact, which you talk a lot about on social media nowadays. Tell me more about what's next and how you see perhaps the next 5-10 years and above kind of like unfold.
Okay, so in the last couple of years, so actually in 2020, I think I had only hosted maybe 6 up until that point, and I was getting a lot of questions if I would plan other people's retreats, and I initially said, no, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still figuring it out. And then 2020 happened, and I'm like, cool, the universe just gave me this opportunity, this space to create what that would look like. So in the last couple of years, I've actually made more income planning other people's retreats, and I've loved it. I have more freedom. I can do it whenever I want from wherever I want. And also it's like, again, people that want to host something, they have a cool story. They're so passionate about their content and how they want to help people. I love being a part of it and making it come to life and doing it in a way that they could do another one and not give up in a hopeless, doom spiral. So I see me transitioning into that more than doing I'll probably still host 1 or 2 a year just because I love seeing the girls. But I want to own a retreat center. I want to build it from the ground up. And I eventually would love to have multiple. And it's because I know exactly what you need when you get there. And I think it would be an extension of my planning services of like, by the way, here are some of the locations. You don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z. You don't have to move the furniture. We got outdoor space. We got indoor space. The bathroom situation isn't weird. There's a separate house for the host. So you do have that physical, like going home after work. There's some separation of just like actually unwinding and not being on day to day. I have so many ideas and, that is something I really want to do. So.
Beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Actually, one of my clients is also building a resort, a wellness resorts. Not a retreat one, but you know what? Maybe it will become one of these days. It's a very interesting industry that is very disruptive now. A bunch of new people coming up with new idea to make it a bit more not only thriving, a little bit more customized, which I think is such it's a buzzword, but it's a buzzword for a reason. The world is shifting this way, customized everything these days.
Yeah.
And
really.
that's something that I think will serve the world to a greater extent. I think it's going to be fantastic to understand that we're all human beings, we're all interconnected, and therefore we should take pride in one another. But within that, we're still very unique, not only from a DNA standpoint, but from a life experience, aspirations, environment standpoints, and the duality of understanding both of these things simultaneously, I think is where peace and freedom actually relies, in my opinion. So
100%. Of like, things aren't black and white. I agree so much with what you just said. Things are both and.
That's right.
We need connection, and we like things customized. We are all different, but that's the best part about us, right? I don't know. It'd be so boring if I just interacted with people just like me.
No, that's right. That's what makes life so dynamic and fascinating. And to me, creativity is truly holding two opposite, basically, thoughts in your mind and not going berserk. That's what it is. It's
100%. It's troubleshooting and then making it beautiful.
Exactly. Making troubleshooting beautiful. Well, Anna VanAgtmael, it's been such an extraordinary time to share your stories and your insight. Thank you so much for being on the Meaningful Podcast. And I would totally be honored if you could share some last words of wisdom with our audience.
I had a friend early on in my career, at a low point say, "Are you making the same mistake?" And I said, "No." And he's like, "Then you're doing it right." And that is something I live and die by. If you're not making the same mistakes, you're doing it right. Don't be afraid to get out there and give it a shot. If it doesn't work out the way you thought it would, just pivot, or don't forget there's a lot of power in quitting if it's not serving you. Life doesn't have to be that serious.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.